Yep. I guess that cat's going to stay stuck in that tree. You know, if you want to get into the hobby of astronomy and you only have $50, then binoculars are a great place to start. But what if your budget was $100? If you look at Amazon right now, the $100 telescope market is pretty saturated. They're almost all short focal length refractors, and they come with introductory eyepieces. You're not going to find any wide field of view eyepieces. Out of the blue, a company asked if I would do a review, and when I heard the name of the company, I thought I might just have to do that. So, here's Horox. That's right, Horox. I know it sounds like an industrial solvent, but all joking aside, I thought, well, let's give this a try. I was surprised. The box is actually kind of heavy for a $100 telescope, but let's open this up and see what a $100 Horox can do for you. All right, so here it is. It's the Horox telescope. It's a refractor, 400 millimeter, 70 millimeter diameter. Let's open it up. And we have a bag. It comes in a bag. All right. It comes in a backpack. Hang on, it's stuck. Okay, interesting. I guess you can haul it around. It's not too heavy, actually. Instruction manual. These read this for using. Never look at the sun, obviously. One bag. This looks like a cell phone adapter. This is obviously a tripod. And here is the telescope. All right. See if there's anything else in here. It's a backpack. It's got little pockets and such. I guess specifically designed for this telescope. It's pretty handy, actually. Okay, so we can try to use the manual, or we can try to guess. All right, so I pulled everything out of the bags, and this is everything in the kit, except for the backpack. I have that somewhere else. So the instruction manual tells you to set up the tripod first, but we're going to focus on the telescope right now and take a look at what we've got. Let's talk about, well, the obvious part, the telescope itself. All right. So this is a 400 millimeter focal length, so, about that long. And the diameter of the lens is 70 millimeters. Let's pull the dew shield off. There we go. So the diameter of that lens is 70 millimeters. All right. Put the dew shield back on. We have this mount here. It looks sort of like a Vixen mount, but it actually is threaded. That's how it's attached to the tripod. Let's see, it's got the two mounts for the viewfinder. And it has rack and pinion, which, that's to be expected. Pretty much all introductory telescopes have rack and pinion. You pull this out, and you can put either an eyepiece or the diagonal end. This one, we're going to use the diagonal, so we'll unloop this. That's a warning that just says, don't stare at the sun. Let's set this down. I'm going to put the lens cap back on. Note that the lens cap has this right here, this cover. This is an aperture mask. The reason for this is really just for looking at the full moon. So if you look at the full moon with all of this light capture area, it's actually pretty bright. You don't really need that because the full moon is so bright. So you can get away with basically masking down the aperture right there. Let's see, it has a lock screw right there. So when you get your focus just right, you can lock it into place. All right, let's go from the inside out, okay? So it has two eyepieces. We have a 20 millimeter. It has the K in front, so that means it's a Kellner. Kellner is just the style of how the lenses are arranged. Very similar to, you know, if you have a Huygens or a Plossl, they're not really brand names, they're just styles to how the lenses are arranged in the eyepiece. This is a Kellner 9 millimeter. Kellner style eyepieces are pretty much what you expect in the introductory level telescopes. You're not going to get wide field of view eyepieces or really expensive eyepieces, but these get the job done. So, well, I should mention the 20 millimeter is for low magnification and the 9 millimeter is for high magnification. This is the diagonal. All right, so this goes in the back of the telescope. Let's do that right now. Pull this out. Tighten these two screws here. One there, one there. This is an image erecting diagonal. That's kind of nice, actually, I have to say, for being in an introductory level telescope. The reason being that traditionally when you look through a telescope, the images are either flipped upside down or flipped right to left. And this is the image erecting diagonal, which does a couple things. First, it makes it a little bit easier to follow things if they move because things aren't flipped around. But also this can double as a spotting scope. So if you use this to look at something on the ground, it's not going to be upside down. All right, it's going to be right side up, sort of like you're looking through binoculars. So this is, let's see, this is where the eyepiece goes. Let's go ahead and put in 20 millimeter. All right. This brings us to the viewfinder. This is a straight through viewfinder, and the power is, let's see what it says. It's a 5 by 24 finder scope. That means the front lens is 24 millimeters, and it has a power of 5x. So that's what that means. This goes in the holder, like this. And we're going to tighten these down. Try to get it centered right now. We'll be adjusting it when we take it outside to give it a test. These will allow you to adjust where it's aimed. This has a little, basically a little peephole. This is kind of a rough aiming device. So for example, if you're pointing it at the moon, you probably don't even need this. You can just look straight through this hole right there. Just point that at the moon. And this literally just attaches right here. So you take these these are pretty hefty thumb knurled nuts off. And I'm just going to tighten it. Just thumb tightening is fine. Okay, let's set up the tripod. So it's just it's actually a nice little beefy tripod, and it is, again, this is aluminum. I really assumed this would be plastic, but not. It's not. It's aluminum. Now this extends and has it can get pretty tall. We'll see how tall when we take it outside, and of course it can go up and down as well. And also the tripod has a bubble level. And it's just an alt azimuth, so up and down, left and right. This part flips over like that, I guess, in case you want to do that. I guess that makes it maybe easy to mount this. So that's just a 1/4 thread. Right. And it flips down like that. And there you go. Right. So you've got your basic 400 millimeter focal length refractor telescope. We'll take it outside. One thing real quick, in the back of the manual, there's a couple important things. One, they give you the formula for magnification. It's actually pretty easy. It's just the focal length of the telescope divided by the focal length of the eyepiece. So for example, 400 divided by 20 gives you a magnification of, well, 400 over 20 is 20, right? So that would be a total magnification of 20, and 9 would give you a magnification of about 44. Also, look through here. If it gives you all the setup instructions. If you have any questions, they actually do have a website. It's horox.co. So you can go there and go to horox.co if you have questions. The only thing that's left now is to take it outside and give it a test. I do something kind of crazy and fun with the Horox here later on, so be sure to stay tuned until the end. The moon's not going to be up for a few hours, so let's go ahead and try to see Jupiter. I've got the viewfinder all sighted in, and I've got the low magnification 20 millimeter eyepiece in. That means there's going to be a magnification of 20 in this case, so let's take a look at Jupiter. So you can definitely see Jupiter's moons. They're pretty sharp. Jupiter itself, you can see the disk of Jupiter. There's a little bit of light flaring going out horizontally on it. But you can definitely see the moons. You can definitely see the small disk of Jupiter. You can't see the weather bands though. It's a little too small for that. Let's see if we can take pictures with the smartphone adapter. This is the camera adapter that comes with the telescope. It is adjustable. You loosen this nut and it slides back and forth. I'll show you why this is important. This camera adapter is very special because it's made specifically for this eyepiece and this eyepiece only. As you can tell, if you look up close, it actually says for the K20 millimeter, for the K9 millimeter. Now the 20 millimeter is going to be our low magnification. We're always going to start with that one. And then of course, once you get everything centered up, we would move on to the higher magnification, the 9 millimeter. So let's see how this works. And here's the trick that I use. Here's the 20 millimeter. And this is spring loaded. So let's open it and see if we can fit our phone in. I've got the camera app open right now. All right, so I'm going to turn it over. And I'm going to loosen this nut. And I'm going to make this hole sit right over the camera. I'm going to tighten this down. Let's check it out. Right, you can see it's kind of got it. It's got the circle. All right, and we're going to take the 20 millimeter eyepiece and slide it in there, and tighten this nut. Make sure it's very tight because this whole thing has to hang off of that. And there we go. It's pretty close. I could probably, let's see if we can get it a little better aligned. That's actually pretty good. Setting up your phone to take pictures takes a few extra steps because of the special changes you have to do to the camera app on your phone. I have a whole video that shows you step by step how to set each of these settings, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. But for now, we're going to take this whole contraption outside and see if we can take some cool pictures. Let's go ahead and mount the smartphone. Make sure all the screws are tight. Now note that the camera itself is much heavier than the telescope, right? And if there's a strong breeze, this might tip over. So don't leave it alone and make sure that the controls are tight. You don't want it falling over because then you'll be out a $100 telescope and a $1,000 phone. I'm going to aim it. So there it is. We just have to flex it at just the right moment. This can be a little bit frustrating. Try to get this just right. No, almost there. Hang on. You have to kind of estimate the amount of flex in the whole system. And I am underestimating the flex. Got it on super high ISO. I don't think we need that. Okay, I'm going to try to focus it now. It's pretty small. It's still pretty bright. It's still pretty small. Let's take a picture. This is actual video being taken with the lowest magnification eyepiece, the 20 millimeter Kellner. It's actually not too bad. As you can see, it's pretty good. There's not a lot of chromatic aberration I was really expecting there to be. So let's increase the magnification and go with the 9 millimeter. Here we are watching video of the telescope using the highest magnification eyepiece, the 9mm Kellner eyepiece. There's a little bit of chromatic aberration around the edges of the moon, but otherwise not as much as I would have thought for a short focal length telescope like this. So, you know, this is a fairly effective moon telescope. I think that's what I'm learning, is basically it's pretty good on the moon. If I could sum up our little Horox in one phrase, I would say that it works well as a moon observation telescope, especially at medium magnifications. I was fully expecting to see a lot of chromatic aberration, evidenced by, blue fringe around the outside of the moon, but I was pleasantly surprised to see very little. Now, that's with the caveat that we didn't really push it to super high magnification. If you wanted to completely eliminate chromatic aberration, you would have to either use a much longer telescope or spend a ton of money on a more expensive brand like a Stellar View or something like that. But for $100, the Horox here, I would say that it shows the moon pretty well. When I used this to look at Jupiter, I could see the 4 Galilean moons as tiny dots. I could also see the disk of Jupiter itself as a small circle. But I couldn't make out any of the cloud bands. Unfortunately, it was just a little bit too small. Jupiter is very bright, by the way, and it did have some horizontal flaring that came out from the planet itself. I'm not sure exactly what was causing that. I did some investigations, but couldn't determine the cause. I have to assume that it possibly has to do with the primary lens up front. I was able to see the Orion Nebula with this, even from here within the city with our light pollution. I wasn't able to take a picture of it because it's too dim for my camera. If you do look at the Orion Nebula, make sure that you look at it before you look at the moon, because the brightness of the moon will temporarily ruin your night vision and make the Orion Nebula harder to see. This works well as a spotting scope, thanks to the corrected image diagonal that we have here. This means that when you look through it, the image that you see is right side up. It's similar to if you're looking through binoculars. So in theory, you could use this to go bird watching if you wanted. In fact, I was able to see this ape-like creature ambling through our neighborhood. Oh, he sees us. Close the door. Close the door. Close the door. Hurry! So what is good about our $100 Horox? Well, I would say that it works well as a general moon observation telescope. The tripod is mostly metal, actually, and I would say it's mildly stable under normal usage. Now, this is clearly designed for kids because even when I have the top fully extended and the legs all the way down, I generally have to stoop down to look through it. And with the top fully extended, I will say that the whole thing gets a bit bendy, especially when you have the camera adapter hanging off the back end of it. Now for planets, you'll get the general gist of the planet, but you won't really see any surface details. The magnification possibility here and the lens quality, it's not there to see that level of detail. Now you will see Jupiter's moons. They will show up as the 4 dots, as I mentioned before. And you will also be able to see the Orion Nebula. Are the stars super sharp? Well, sometimes, not exactly. It sort of depends on what part of the viewer field that you're looking at. The eyepieces themselves are acceptable. We have a low magnification eyepiece and a high magnification eyepiece. They are Kellner designs, which is pretty standard for the introductory telescope market. Now these both have the 1.25" barrels, so you could, in theory, buy other eyepieces and they would fit in here. Now, for example, I tested it with some of my own Explorer Scientific 82-degree field of view eyepieces, and they worked just fine. I realize that's overkill, but I just wanted to give it a try. Stay tuned. You're going to see we're going to actually do something with that. So what about the camera adapter? Well, this falls under a little bit of good and a little bit of bad. Let's talk about the good first, obviously. This was one of the easiest smartphone adapters that I've ever actually had to set up. The most popular videos on my channel are reviews that I do of smartphone adapters. And this one was really easy to set up. That's partially because it is designed to work with only these two eyepieces. So you're kind of limited to these two magnification levels. Now, to show you that, this is actually a pretty decent camera holder, I set this up and I put it on my large Dobsonian telescope, and it actually worked just fine. Well, the bad has to do mainly with the flexibility of the tripod, especially if everything is fully extended, and it has to do with the camera adapter. I mentioned before, the camera adapter actually works well as a camera adapter. The problem comes that when you have this fully loaded with your heavy phone and you put it on the back of the telescope, it's going to pull down and it's going to flex the system. So what you have to do is you have to nose down a little bit ahead of your target, knowing that when you have this heavy weight, it's going to flex it back. That was a little bit frustrating, I have to admit. One thing that I have to warn you about, though, is that when you have a camera adapter on here with a fully loaded camera and it's got the heavy weight on the back, don't leave this unattended, because if there's a strong wind and you have this weight all offset, it can actually tip over. Okay, let's talk about feature requests or wishes that we have. I really only have two of these. The viewfinder that it has, it's an optical viewfinder, and it's the straight through kind of viewfinder. I really wish they had instead gone for one of these red dot viewfinders. These are pretty much being sold with almost every telescope that's coming out these days. In fact, this has the two holes that match the two threaded studs. So in theory, you could buy one of these and you could put it right on there. We can get them for under $20. I can only imagine what the telescope manufacturers could buy them for with their bulk discount buying power. The second accessory that I would like to ask for is a accessories tray or parts tray on the tripod, something that would hold the lens cap, the camera adapter, or the extra eyepiece, just extra stuff that you have when you're using a telescope. All right, so who is the target audience for this $100 Horox telescope? Well, let's start out with who it's not for. If you already have an expensive telescope, then this is not made for you. Let's be clear about that. You've seen the city, you can't go back to the farm. The Horox telescope, though, by any measure, is an introductory telescope. And, most parents know how quickly their kids' interests change. So I think the ideal audience for this is probably the parent who just wants to give their kids a taste of astronomy without breaking the budget. Now, with that said, and this is very serious, regardless of what telescope that you buy your kids, never let them use it during the day or when the sun is up. Kids are curious, and they will inevitably try to aim any telescope or even binoculars at the sun, and that will cause permanent blindness. This, of course, applies to adults too. Don't be stupid. So what is the competition for the Horox telescope? Well, Celestron actually has a similar sized model for $10 more, but it doesn't come with a camera adapter, which I thought was a little bit surprising. It does come with some astronomy software, but I think at this price range, the buyer is more likely to play around with the camera adapter than they would with customized astronomy software. I also checked with Celestron, and they confirmed that the two eyepieces that their model comes with are basically the same as the ones that come with the Horox. They're the Kellner style. The Celestron also comes with a much shorter dew shield, which was a little bit surprising. It almost seems somewhat ineffective. So is either of these a higher quality build than the other? Well, at around $100, I'm not really sure if that matters. The backpack is a nice feature, which really does make this portable. So who should buy this? Well, if you already have a really nice expensive telescope, then there's no need for you to buy this telescope. However, if you don't have an expensive telescope and you don't have access to an astronomy club, and you want to give your kids a taste for basic astronomy without breaking the bank, well, then this one will work just fine. Just know that this one works pretty much as a moon telescope. If your kids do go on to bigger and better telescopes, they can always use the eyepieces and the camera adapter in the other telescope. Or they can just hand this down to their little brother or little sister. As for this unit, I'll be donating it to a local Cub Scout pack that I think would get a kick out of taking this on their campouts. But before I do that, I'm going to do something a little bit fun and a little bit crazy. I'm going to hot rod my Horox. I'm going to take a lot of the accessories that I've gathered over the years, and I'm going to make the most rock solid 400 millimeter refractor telescope that I can. Go ahead and start the montage music. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd love to know what you think about these low-cost introductory telescopes. And if you want to support this channel, please consider using the purchase links that are in the description box below. Clear skies, everybody. And it's following the Great Orion Nebula.